1, 2. Check 1, 2. Everybody hear that okay out there? Yeah? Good? Good evening. Thank you for being here for this important conversation, and welcome to those of you who are watching on live stream as well. In my pastoral life, I confront issues of life and death a lot, and staggering to me the number of people who are both misinformed about how medical care is and isn't, and what we call MAiD is and isn't. So I thought we would get folks who know a lot more about palliative care and a lot more about MAiD come here to speak to us. And because I received a number of requests from people who couldn't be here with us in person tonight, we're live streaming it as well. So the format tonight is going to be about 30 or 40 minutes listening to Deacon Larry Worthen, who I'll introduce in a moment, and then a few moments of question and answers. And then we'll move to Monica McNamara, who's no stranger to any of us here in this parish. She's a recently retired palliative care nurse and brings an important perspective into this conversation about end-of-life matters. So, firstly, well, Monica needs no introduction. I just introduced her briefly. She's well known in the community. She's been living here for how many years? 34 years living here in this parish ever since then. She's just gotten back from a trip to Belize, where she built a house for a family in need of a home. There's an organization called Hand in Hand. I first met Monica in Nicaragua when we were doing similar work down there. There's her husband, when we were doing similar work. So it's a pleasure to have Monica here today. And Deacon Larry Worthen is a deacon in our local church, the Archdiocese of Halifax, Germany. He's the Executive Director of CMDA, Christian Medical and Dental Association of Canada. You can imagine there are a lot of physicians who are struggling at a deep level of conscience about all of these issues. So if we could tonight, please give a warm welcome to Deacon Larry and to Monica McNamara.
Thank you for the warm welcome, and thank you all for coming today. I'm very interested in Monica's sharing about palliative care, which is a very important service in today's world. It's really nice to have a great big talk out there. Being both a lawyer and challenged is pretty succinct. I remember my first assignment as deacon with Father at St. John the 23rd Parish. Anybody here know Father Eric? Yeah, Father Eric was very self-disciplined when he came. He knew he shouldn't be telling his deacon, how to do things. So, but I kind of got the sense he was irritated with my colleagues, and he still had a clock on the wall. So I don't have a real installation now. So, now, as Father Rob said, the Christian Medical Association of Canada, association of 1,500 Christian doctors and dentists across Canada, is an ecumenical group. About 20% of our members are Catholic, and 12 years ago, they were like-minded enough to hire a Catholic to be their executive director. So I've been honored to serve those doctors for that number of years. And Father Rob actually was our associate staff at Dalhousie University with our students there. We do a range of things. The whole goal is to help doctors and dentists integrate their faith with medical practice. And if you are a doctor or dentist, or you know a doctor or dentist, or you think might really benefit from our function, we've got some cards, I think grants out there, and you can just take one and give it to the doctor or dentist in your life. The whole issue of medical assistant had died, as Father Rob said, is very much concerned right now, particularly for our clergy, because what's happening is that it's affecting the church. It's affecting members of the church. We're getting members who are choosing MAiD. They may not understand what the church teaches or what the perspective of the church is on this issue. And so it's an important issue. And as a matter of fact, the priests, when they have their retreat in June, are going to be dealing specifically with this issue to become more aware of it and to learn how to counteract it within the body of Christ. So, what is the purpose of life? The reading from Galatians, St. Paul says, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live is in the body. I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. There's a very wonderful theologian at the Atlantic School of Theology by the name of Dr. Deacon. Some of you may have heard of him. He just wrote a book about moral teaching. His point is that Catholic moral teaching in the past has been very much like, reading a book. And he said it's not like that. What it is that as we go through the Christian life, we give ourselves more and more and more to Christ, so that we put on Christ in our behavior and in our relationships. And so when we look at moral teaching in that sense, in other words, how do we become more like Christ? What actions do we have to take to become more like Christ? How do we live out our lives to be more like Christ? Then that's perhaps an easier way for us to understand the teaching on Catholic teaching on euthanasia. So as we go through this, we're going to continue to go back to Dr. Dean's thinking, and I'm going to check in with you at the end so that we can once again revisit that. So, what is euthanasia? This is important for us to figure this out right off the bat. Euthanasia is the termination of a person's life with their consent. So, it's normally done by way of lethal injection in Canada. Assisted suicide is most often used in the United States. And in the United States, a lethal cocktail is developed, and the patient drinks it themselves. And that results in the patient's death. Now, medical assistance in dying in Canada is mostly euthanasia. So we have to be very clear about this. Medical assistance in dying, probably before this term was used, a lot of people would say that was her job. But this is not Dr. job. As a matter of fact, I hear doctors, nurses say, this has no part of dying care. This is a practice that's outside even the practice of medicine, because it means that you're actually killing a patient, you're taking their life by a lethal injection. The number of assisted suicides in Canada is tiny compared to the number of euthanasias. Now, how did we get here? Well, the sad reality, and I must confess before you all that I've been heavily afraid. I hope you won't hold that against me. But we got here by way of a court decision, Carter versus Canada, in 2016. And most people don't realize this. It was the decision of one judge in the British Columbia Supreme Court. One judge heard a challenge to the criminal code provisions dealing with death. And that judge decided that she would create criteria in which she felt people should be able to access euthanasia in Canada. And these criteria were developed by this one judge. Now, in our court system, that got appealed to the BC Court of Appeal, and then eventually went to the Supreme Court of Canada. When it went to the Supreme Court of Canada, they approved the judge's decision. And by doing that, they approved her criteria. So that any time that politicians at the federal level try to restrict the criteria, then it gets struck down by the courts. Now, any of you who know anything about politics and civics will know that it doesn't make sense to have a judge develop criteria that are going to be used to decide whether someone lives or whether they die. It doesn't make any sense, does it? Because politicians are paid to represent you. And they should be the ones to tackle this issue. But in Canada, our politicians are scaredy cats. They don't want to deal with these tough issues. They would prefer that it gets dealt with by the courts. Because then when you complain, they can say, well, no, that was decided by the courts. So they have no control over that. So that's specifically what's happening in Canada. What are the problems with the criteria? The problems with the criteria is they're extremely vague. The patient must have a grievous and irremediable illness. Okay? Grievous and irremediable, those two words are neither legal terms nor medical terms. And it's irremediable by any means acceptable to the patient. So, you know, if any of you have any experience with somebody who has mental health problems, you know there's often side effects of the medication. And so the patient can say, well, I don't want that treatment, so therefore I want euthanasia. So there was a case of a 26-year-old young man in Toronto who said he wanted euthanasia. He had cancer, and he had a 65% chance of complete recovery. But because he didn't want to go through chemotherapy, he opted for MAiD. And he ended up dying. Now, other jurisdictions, such as the Netherlands, require you to take all treatments that are available, but not in Canada. So hopefully you can see that some of the decisions made by this one judge were not practical, nor were they protective of vulnerable patients. Excellent. So, euthanasia has been expanding since the original court decision. In 2016, legislation was passed in which the politicians tried to restrict it to situations where death was reasonably foreseeable. And why did they do that? Because they were concerned about people with disabilities being euthanized just because of their disability. You see, when you euthanize somebody just because of their disability, as a society, we're saying that you don't really, your life is not really that valuable because you have a disability, so therefore, we don't feel bad for you, so we might as well just, if you want to die, you might as well just kill you. Whereas an able-bodied person, they say, no, we can't kill you because you're able-bodied. We did, there's something in society called ableism. Have you heard of ableism? Ableism is the sense that if you are not able-bodied, then you're not as valuable as an able-bodied person. In 2021, we did a Negative Street survey. We sponsored a Negative Street survey. And we found that in Ontario, I believe it was over 60% of the people who responded felt that there was a sense in society that able-bodied people were more valuable than people with disabilities. So if you're living with that, day in, day out, and say, well, I believe you. After a while, you're going to internalize it. If you're constantly fighting the government to get services and so on, after a while, you just give in. And in the same survey, we found that 55% of respondents said that they were concerned that persons with disabilities would choose euthanasia because they couldn't find appropriate services. So there is a real concern in the public about this. Even amongst people who believe that it should be legal, there's concern about this. So it expanded. At first it was death had to be reasonably foreseeable. The government tried to protect people with disabilities. That got challenged in Quebec, the lower court. The current federal government decided not to repeal it. And so that included persons with disabilities. You probably are aware that at one point they were trying to expand to include people with mental illness. That mental illness would be the only reason to euthanize. And that has now moved up to 2027. But what a lot of people don't realize is this wasn't because people were concerned about people with disabilities. It became a political issue, and it was decided that it would be put off until after the next election campaign so that it wouldn't cause the government problems in terms of free life. The other thing that's happened is that people have people who provide euthanasia have decided that there are certain illnesses that are called organic illnesses, they're not mental illnesses. So, for instance, there was a 27-year-old young woman in Calgary who was on the autism spectrum, and she also had ADHD, and she applied for euthanasia and she was successful in getting it. Even though you're not allowed to get paid for mental illness, they said this was an organic disability, and therefore she qualified. Her father, who she lived with, was so distraught in court, trying to stop it. He did get a preliminary injunction, but now it's under appeal now, and we're really skeptical that it's going to be successful. So this woman had no other health problems other than autism. I have a grandson who is on the autism spectrum. Do I have to spend the rest of my life worrying that at a low point, he's going to approach a physician and ask for me? But that's the situation in our country. You may have also seen another news article about a man who was a quadriplegic and had a chest infection. He was admitted to the emergency room in Montreal. They didn't have a proper mattress for him with his quadriplegia. He was 4 days in the emergency room because they couldn't get a bed in the hospital, a regular bed in the hospital. And as a result, I think that's very severe bed sores. And those bed sores after 4 days got to the point where he asked the doctors for name, and he was given name. Now this is a clear example where the healthcare system has failed, and we're dealing with that failure by communication. I don't know what's happening in Scotia, but my private care colleagues in Ontario tell me that 2 of their health authorities, the government told the health authority that they must create a MAiD program with their existing private care budget. So in other words, what that meant was that a nurse would be chosen, or a physician would be chosen from that private care team to provide MAiD within the private care budget framework. So that means that they're directly taking money from private care and they're putting it into MAiD. And these are the types of things that are happening. And as Father says, the average team is not where it is. So, in Canada, we've got the most lax criteria in the world. The most lax criteria in the world. They're trying to expand the criteria. There's a recommendation now that you open to children, even under the age of 18. There's a recommendation that the Quebec physicians group came in and recommended to Parliament that they consider euthanasia for infants under the age of 1. So this is where we're headed. So we've got, on the one hand, the loosest criteria in the world, and then the government decided to ask the MAiD providers themselves to make some recommendations to the provincial governments on how to administer this, which was a little bit like putting the fox in the house, because they said, well, it should be treated like any other treatment, and it should be available everywhere in Canada. So it must now be available everywhere in Canada. The only exemptions are religious-based organizations. But there have been hospices, there's a hospice in BC that was expropriated because it refused to allow medical purposes. So this is being forced into all hospitals. It's really one of the only services that's available coast to coast in Canada. And so the result of these 2 things at the same time, I don't, Greg, can you just take us back? Thank you. You see the red line there? That's the rate at which Canada is increasing. It's the percentage of people who die by MAiD. You can see that we are now second only to the Netherlands. The Netherlands have had their system in place since 2002. Ours is in place since 2016. We are almost number 1. As a matter of fact, I think right now we are number 1, and I estimate that we've lost 60,000 people from MAiD in Canada. Now, at the same same time, there's a real concern about access to alternatives. They were thinking about legalizing MAiD for people with psychiatric illness. But if they had done that, it would have been a 3-month waiting period to get MAiD. Do you know what the average wait time is in Canada to see a psychiatrist? Average wait time is 6 months. So you would have had 6 months to wait to see a psychiatrist, but you could have gotten MAiD in 3 months. And there's also movements all across Canada where doctors will be forced to advise the patient, even before the patient asks, that they may be eligible for MAiD. See, the push is to make MAiD a treatment, a therapeutic treatment, like any other treatment. Just like, getting a new hip or knee replacement or an appendix taken out, MAiD will be seen to be a similar thing, a therapeutic intervention. But my question is, if death is a therapeutic intervention, then what is the incentive in the medical system to do anything else? Once you say that the medical care system, once you say that death is a reasonable output, a reasonable result for a patient, then what is the incentive to do anything else? So the whole idea of trying to maintain life and the sacredness of the individual, the dignity of the person, that all comes from Christianity. But when you push God out of healthcare, you end up with a very stark reality. I don't think people understand how this change is affecting the whole ethic of the healthcare system itself and the morality. I hear often from high-grade doctors in Ontario, and they tell me that they're in tremendous trouble because they feel that they move from they're experiencing moral injury or PTSD from this experience. I had a private doctor tell me that she has actually gone to patients who decided they want MAiD. She's gone to a benefit remission, she's discussed alternatives, and then she's been criticized by the family and by her colleagues. You see the problem? If the ethics of the healthcare system is that it's good for patients to die, then if you approach the patient with an alternative and you take it, then you're deviating from the decision that had already been made by the family and by the healthcare workers. And it's so bad that we have high-grade doctors actually leave the problems and go somewhere else. That's the type of strikes that physicians and nurses are doing on a daily basis. Now, you can't see this alone, and I apologize for that, but I think it's important for us to think about why people choose euthanasia. You see, with proper palliative care, practically all pain and end of life is manageable. There's something called palliative sedation, which can be used in a situation where they can't touch the pain, then there is palliative sedation to sedate the patient so that they don't experience the pain. And that happens in roughly 1.1% of cases. So all pain and end of life is being dealt with. So you may say, why are people choosing MAiD? Well, they're choosing MAiD mainly for existential reasons, existential suffering. So on that chart, you'll find that 50% of people who choose MAiD in 2022 did so because they had loss of dignity. And 35% chose MAiD because they felt that they were a burden to the family. Now, I do pastoral care, and I know that there are tons of people who feel like they're a burden to the family. We don't know them. We bring in the family and say, how do you feel about caring for your dad or your wife or your husband? They always say, I'm so grateful to be able to care for them. Now, other reasons here are things like no longer being able to participate in meaningful activities. But the question there is, what's meaningful? You see, if you're a disabled person who adjusts to disability, then you can find meaning in any activity. So the point simply is that what these people need is good kind of care, which Monica will tell you is not just drugs, but it's also counseling. And what these people need is counseling and support, not lethal injection. But the sad reality is that the lethal injection is easier. she's responsible, she's a psychiatrist in downtown Toronto, the University Health Network. She is responsible for the whole MAiD service. She provides MAiD, she and her team provide MAiD for all of the patients at the University Health Network, which is the largest health network in downtown Toronto. 80 in the country. She came out last year in the Times magazine and said something very brave. She said the current criteria do not properly protect vulnerable people. In a normal country, it's the result of a royal commission. In Canada, it's like, oh well, no reaction. And so that, to me, when the MAiD providers are saying that the current criteria don't protect vulnerable people, and that just makes my heart hurt, right? There's no question that that's wrong. Oh yeah, and so that was just a point that Dan had made, that there's a misconception of people choosing because of physical pain. That's not the case. Next slide. So, we're getting down into some of the things that we're doing to try to combat this problem. One is a program called No Options, No Choice. We're trying to highlight our vulnerable patients and how they're not getting properly served. You know, I did a presentation with the Hospice and Palliative Care Association of Canada, and as a group, we estimated that only 30 to 50% of Canadians get access to proper palliative care. So what happens is that as you reduce the amount of palliative care, then there are less choices for people and they're more likely to choose MAiD. So what we did is we highlighted the lives of 4 vulnerable people. We had 2 who had mental health issues. Sam was a young man out there, attempted suicide in Calgary when he was 20 years old. He went to the emergency, his friends took him to the emergency room, and they basically said to him, they gave him a phone number, told him to call. They discharged him after 12 hours, gave him a phone number, gave him a bus ticket, and off he went. He just can't believe that there's so little support and care for people with psychiatric illness. We also have a lady out there, I'm going to show you a video of her in a minute, who has suffered with disability all her life, and she talks about how easy it would have been for her at certain key points in her life just to end her life by MAiD, as opposed to fighting on. But she did fight on, and she made some tremendous strides for people with disability, not just for herself, but for the whole community of disabled people in Ontario. Her name is Tracy, and she was a tremendous encouragement to me, just to hear and to see how she developed. We're going to watch a short video by Tracy now. She's going to talk to her perspective on me. Next slide.
Being able to wait to go back the entire day was the price of my freedom, because I was in a regular high school with me, and I was told if I couldn't do that, I would not be able to go to high school because there was no assistance available. And so, I just had to learn how to, and, when I came in, so we just had being able to wait to go to the bathroom the entire day was the price of my freedom, because I was in a regular high school in the community, and I was told if I couldn't do that, I would not be able to go to high school because there was no assistance available. available with something to wash her. And so, I just had to learn how to man. When I came in, someone just had to turn the desk around the other way so I could sit at the desk because the chairs were attacked and I brought my own chair. So it was just, that was the accommodation. Education was very important. It was important to our mom and me to in our minds from a very early age. This was a path that we need to be on. And to me, it was a road to freedom. Living in the institution was always the sword and Damocles, hanging over my head. Very afraid of that outcome. If I had to leave for nursing home at 18 years old, and I was off the MAiD instead, I might very well have chosen that if I didn't see any hope for anything else happening. I went on to university, decided to learn to be a teacher. That was the beginning of the rest of my life. I was able to work at a private college that worked with adults who needed to read and write. We worked with people with disabilities, also people who were coming out of federal prisons. People who were getting off of the street, just people basically overlooked in society in many ways. That was very consistent with just my own growing belief about advocacy and recognizing people where other people might not recognize. And then from there, I was invited to work in the government and helping the government learn how to make their services more accessible to people with disabilities. One of the legacies was supporting the Ministry of Transportation in their efforts to have accessible on-road stops. It's work with them to make them really accessible. So that's really great, and I'm able to enjoy that myself as now that I'm retired. And if I'm traveling somewhere, there's always a stop. That's really nice. And I do my best, or at least put away and find it. If you stop to think about it, if a person cannot get out to get, up in the morning or get, enough meals a day, or get out of the house sometimes that they want to be able to do that, those things affect their quality of life more than the disability itself affects their quality of life. All Canadians do not currently have access to all the supports that they need. When Canada was first thinking about a law for medical assistance in dying, I was quite concerned that this would be a slippery slope. It distresses me to be in a society that makes it easier for a person to choose death from a so-called menu of health options than to choose life because of having services in place. There was one woman who requested and got it after 2 years of fighting to get housing that would accommodate her needs as a person with environmental sensitivities, and is now dead when really she just needed to be moved to another housing program that offered her the rental subsidy that she had without having to wait years for that. I think there is a prevailing attitude that people think they'd rather be dead than disabled. You're almost always at the brunt of those kinds of assumptions. And some people with disabilities will internalize that feeling. Their first reaction might be that they'd rather not live with that situation, losing their hearing, losing their mobility, losing their, capacity to make decisions. Like, whatever they need. What people need are services, supports, to live in the community, things that actually truly meet their needs, and continue to contribute to society as workers in the workforce, as parents, as brothers or sisters in a family, neighbors, as a friend. Like, people can contribute in many ways. If they had those supports, I don't think they would put MAiD on the top of their list.
So it's my great honor to meet Tracy and be able to spend time with her. So, what should be the Christian motivation? What should be our direction around this? Well, the most important thing, I think, is that we need to realize that when Moses received the 10 Commandments from God, there was one in there that said, "You shall not murder." And then when Jesus was dialoguing with the rich young man said, "What must I do to get eternal life?" And Jesus listed off the 10 Commandments, and one of them was, "You shall not murder." So it's pretty clear that killing people is wrong. It's just not what God wants of us. And we talked earlier about putting on Christ, conforming ourselves to Christ. Even though Christ passed he also endured the suffering that happened, and by passing through that suffering, he was able to gain for us eternal life. So also, if we conform ourselves to the Lord, then we also, when we rely on Him for everything, then we also should be able to get through the challenges of our lives and also, experience the glory of God in our lives. But the other piece that's really important is the social justice piece. Jesus said, when he talked about the final judgment, he said, "Whatever you do to the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you do it to me." You see, for all the Tracys that are out there in the world who are just trying to get by day by day by day, Jesus will ask us individually what we've done for these vulnerable people. And we just turn back and allow the government to provide them with death and not provide them with the means and tools for life. And I think that's a very important concern as well. Next slide. Now, it's also important for us to distinguish between euthanasia and withdrawing care. The church allows us to withdraw care if death is imminent, and basically the church's teaching is that we don't have to take on heroic measures at the end of life. So we need to distinguish between the actual killing of a person and just simply not or discontinuing care and allowing death to take its course. Those are two very different moral things. There was a 2020 document that came from the Vatican that summarized the church's teaching on euthanasia. And a recent document, actually, in which the Pope said that euthanasia was beneath human dignity and should not be used under any circumstances. But in this document, Samaritanus Bonus, they basically indicated that euthanasia is something that's called intrinsically evil. That means in Catholic moral theology that it's something that is never permitted under any circumstances. It doesn't matter what the intention or what the circumstances. It is always and everywhere wrong to kill someone under these circumstances. And the part that I find very concerning is that many Catholics are confused about this. And many do not realize that they are in danger. If someone goes through with euthanasia, they are at risk of committing a mortal sin. because they are doing something directly against the Ten Commandments in a very serious matter. And if they have full knowledge of what they're doing and they completely consent to it, then that would result in a mortal sin, which would separate them from God and possibly forever. So it's a very, very serious, if we have members of our family who are considering this, the first thing we need to ask is, why do you feel you need to die? What is the suffering that you're experiencing? And how can I come alongside to help you, support you in this? But if someone really has their decision made up, then they need to share with them, or call in our priest to share with them, the risk they're putting their soul in. And this is so serious that the church has said, and this is not just our diocese, but the universal church, that if someone has said a date for me, and they ask for the last rites, the priest is not allowed to give it to them. And the reason for that is that if you have the intention of committing a serious sin, of turning your back on God, of saying to God, this life you've given me, I no longer want it. So taking that is such a severe rejection of God that the church is saying, we can't give you the anointing of the sin. So I think we need to really, that is something that we really need to think about. Next slide. So we go back to the purpose of life again, of conforming our lives to Christ. Of every choice that we make, every decision we make, is to glorify God, to become more and more like Jesus. I hope you can see that the decision to end your life by euthanasia does not conform yourself to Christ. I can't imagine Jesus doing it. I can't imagine him wanting us to do it. Instead, he suffered the cross and did that, and the result was salvation of the world. So also, we can offer up our sacrifice. Remember, we're not talking about physical suffering now, because that should be dealt with by dying of care. But we can offer up our existential sufferings and the difficulties that we have, and the grief that we experience at difficult times like this. We can offer it up to God. I experienced that with my own father, who was in palliative care for 2 years. And thanks be to God, didn't experience any pain, even though he had a large cancerous tumor on the side of his head. And it was during that period that he himself said to me, Larry, I don't want to live anymore. And in my dialogue with him, I discovered it was because he no longer had anything, he no longer felt he had anything to give. And I was able to listen to him and to help him to understand that he was giving that his whole life. And now it was our opportunity to give back something to him for what he did to us. The time we had was precious. I'm sure Monica, for her experience in palliative care, at that time is extremely precious. So many good things can happen during that period. Life is so precious, and we only have one life. We shouldn't give it up prematurely. We have a program called Dying with Christ, Living with Hope, but of course I'm just about out of time. So we hope to be able to sometime in working with Father Rob to consider having it here. But I do want to just talk about the conscience issue, because that's really important. Hi, Joe. I just know that you're here. Good to see you. If you want to let it slide. The really heartbreaking thing, and one of the main reasons we're here tonight, is that the college, the Nova Scotia College of Physicians and Surgeons, who regulate the practice of medicine in Nova Scotia, have decided that doctors must make an effective referral for euthanasia. Now, a referral in medicine is actually the doctor who makes the referral believes that the patient should consider euthanasia. And so our doctors, Christian doctors, are unable to make that referral. We've had 30 doctors so far who have come out and said, we cannot follow this policy. But the college, and the college's goal here is to normalize euthanasia so it becomes like any normal procedure, is saying you must refer. And if you don't refer, we will investigate you, we will discipline you, and we will take your license. They publicly stated they will take your license. And when they heard that 30 doctors were opposed to this, they basically said, well, these people are welcome. So our Archbishop is very, very concerned about this, as is the Bishop of Maginley. And our organization has hired 3 new staff in the last week. We have until the 24th of May, which is when the college may consider this policy. We don't know for sure they will consider it, but that's the earliest possible time they can consider it. In that time, we try to get as many letters written as possible to the Minister of Health. We want the government to intervene, and the Bishop himself has written to the Minister of Health to ask for a meeting. As of yet, we haven't been given one. We understand that there's some problem around the Minister meeting with Christian groups, and concerned that this might look bad. So I hope you understand what's going on here. Like a beleaguered minority is being discriminated against. What will happen is that Catholics, Christians, Muslims, Jews will not be able to practice medicine anymore because they can't get on the bandwagon for MAiD. And I hope you understand how serious it is. I've worked in every other province in Canada, and I have met with ministers of health in almost every province. I met with the Premier of Brunswick. This is the only province where I haven't been able to meet with the Minister of Health. So we have a problem here in Nova Scotia. There's no other college in Canada that is as strict as this college. The only way we can explain it is that they are ideologically in support of euthanasia. And they are trying to exclude doctors who are opposed to it. That's the only conclusion we can come to. And the only way this can change is if Christians in Nova Scotia stand up and say no. 30 doctors have said no. We need you to support them. Because they can easily be brushed aside. Politicians cannot brush aside. Thousands of people who say this is wrong. So we passed out letters tonight. I'm hoping that you will sign one and leave it with us when you go out. I'm hoping also that you might be willing to take some and give them to your friends and get them to sign them. I preached in 2 different parishes, and during that time we had 500 letters. And on the electronic campaign, if you're really text at it, you can just take your phone and use the square there and automatically come to the website. You go to the website, it takes 2 minutes to send in an email to your MLA list. Just type in your postal code and you can just send it directly to your MLA. Or you can sign a paper copy with the local Minister of Health and other officials of the region. But I think that hopefully, I've had a challenge over the last several years. I go all across Canada explaining about this problem. When I speak to Christians, the response I normally get is complete shock. This is happening. You certainly don't get it from a media, but everything I've said, I don't say anything unless I have personal experience of it, and it's true. So I beg you, first of all, pray for us. To help, particularly the 30 doctors, help the strength people who stand up. And then I ask you also to consider signing a letter and helping us with this project. Thanks so much. God bless you.
Thank you, Deacon Larry. Part of this evening is a chance to engage in conversation, so we'll take a few minutes here. If anyone has a question, I can just come to you and hold the mic. And before I do that, a few minutes ago, a friend of mine who I just want to introduce, Reverend David Maginley, has arrived here. David recently retired as a chaplain on the palliative care ward. So, Monica, you know him very, very well. David, maybe after Monica speaks, you might be able to give a little rejoinder, since we're so happy you're here. I'll be having a conversation, the parish has a podcast, I'll be having a conversation with David on this topic in a couple of weeks, which I'm looking forward to as well. So, right now, questions on the first part of our presentation.
Two questions, Larry. First of all, has the province outlawed or banned conscientious objector on behalf of the doctors?
The decision has come from the College of Physicians and Surgeons, which is a regulatory body. It's a creature of the legislature. It was created by legislation, but they operate at arm's length from government. And what they've said is that doctors must provide an effective referral. Now, our doctors cannot do that. So if a patient comes to one of our doctors, we are okay telling them, you can go to Nova Scotia Health, and they have a 1-800 line, which you can get on the website, you can contact them that way. We're okay with that. But we cannot write a letter to these other doctors saying we want our patient to be seen. We find that to be immoral. It's something we just can't do. It makes us a participant in the actual act of euthanasia. We feel that death is evil, that we don't want our patients to die, so we can't recommend that another doctor talk to them about it. So it's the referral that is in question right now. It's in the debate.
So the health department is saying you must refer. You cannot say I'm not going to refer, or my conscience prevents me from doing this.
That's right. So the college itself has the power to regulate medicine, so they can investigate a doctor, they can discipline a doctor, they can take the doctor's license if the doctor refuses. And we already have an example of one doctor in Scotia who's already been disciplined because of this. So at a time that we're actually, we're like 150,000 Nova Scotians don't have a doctor. And these people at the college are so highly budgeted that they're going to chase 30 doctors out of Nova Scotia. That'll just give you an idea of what our rate is.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Second question.
Just a sec, Lloyd.
About the Alberta program.
What's that?
Your letter says that Alberta has developed an innovative approach. What's innovative about their approach?
In Alberta, they have a nurse practitioners hired, so that when the patient expresses interest in MAiD, the first person they talk to is not an assessor, it's the nurse practitioner, who has the power to refer them to any alternative service. So that rather than being directed towards MAiD, they come to the nurse practitioner and she or he can directly refer them for palliative care, they can directly refer them for other tests, they do have the capacity to refer them for an assessment. But we feel that it's a fairer way, because in Ontario, for instance, and in Nova Scotia, if you call into the MAiD line, then the first person you get set up with an assessor. And what often happens is that once you make that decision, you're locked in to that approach. And they say it's like the train going down the tracks. It's very difficult to change that, where we feel that the first person you talk to should be someone who can listen to your problems, identify what issues there are, and then have that person know what services are available and actually link them into those services. So in Alberta, their nurse practitioners there actually have arrangements with various services so they get people in faster.
Go ahead. Just a sec. We've got more questions. Okay. There's other people with questions.
I heard a program on CBC Radio not that long ago, and it was on this topic of MAiD. And one of the people speaking said that two criteria that qualify an individual for MAiD are age of 80 or over and frailty. So basically anybody who's an octogenarian who's frail qualifies. Is that the case across Canada, or are there different criteria used from province to province or territory to territory?
No, the actual criteria, as I said, were developed by one judge in BC, and then those were incorporated into the current code. But there was a determined that a grievance and irremediable illness could be age. So age itself would qualify. So, in case the other problem with the system in Canada is that the criminal code is set up so that the doctor just has to be of the opinion that the criteria are met. So it's totally in the mind of the doctor. And we know that most, like in Ontario, for instance, only like 1% of all doctors in Ontario either assess or provide MAiD. You see, the medical profession in general doesn't want to have anything to do with it because they know that all patients will end up dying. So what happens is that the people doing MAiD are all members of dying community who believe that euthanasia should be on demand. So if the doctor only has to be of a subjective opinion that the criteria are met, then it's like in my opinion, it's open season. And for instance, things like competency. The level of competency required is no different than the level required to approve any medical procedure. So a person can be, we've had situations, this was a situation where the woman was the mother of the physician. The physician had been dealing with the mother's gerontologist who said that the patient was incompetent. The two MAiD assessors came in just over a week later and determined that in their opinion, the patient was competent. And the doctor found out about it when she was on the ferry from Nanaimo to the mainland, and they told her, your mother will be dying from MAiD tomorrow morning at 10:30. This woman found out that she would have an hour and a half to say goodbye to her mother. So that's the sort of things that are going on.
I'm wondering who's pushing this on us? Who's pushing this on us? What people?
There's, in Nova Scotia, there are 4 prominent people who, how many people here know Sister Nula Kenny? You know Sister Nula? I said to Sister Nula one time, I said, Sister Nula, I think there's only about 12 people in Canada that are pushing this. She looked at me, she got that look in her eye, she looked like she was going to burst a vein in her neck. She went, try 5! And the 4 horses of the apocalypse are here in Nova Scotia, Jocelyn Downey, who is cross-appointed in philosophy and medical school. Dr. Gus Grant, who's the registrar of the Nova Scotia College. There's, I can't remember his name, there's this child psychiatrist at the IWK who is very prominent in saying children should get MAiD, and there should be MAiD for people with psychiatric illness. And then the 4th person. But surprisingly, the leaders in Canada, most of them are right here in Nova Scotia. So there's like Sister Nula's pretty close. There's like 5 or 6 people who are driving this. And what's happening is that Canadians are so weak and unwilling to fight about anything that they just ignore it. And this group, I kid you not, they'll continue to push until it is the nation on demand. And all of you, when you come to end of life, or even before, or if you have family members who are vulnerable, you will find, much to your chagrin, that they'll be coming to you saying, Dad or Mom or daughter or son, next week I'm dying by euthanasia. And you won't be able to say anything about it.
We'll take another question from Carolyn, and then we'll have time for one more before we move on to Monica.
Just in regards to the mental health issue around it, I'm wondering if I was someone who had guardianship over an adult who didn't have capacity, could I apply for it on their behalf?
Well, Carolyn, the thing that worries me is the coalition that sent to Quebec came to the federal committee, and they recommended that children under the age of 1 should be able to be euthanized. So you know how things are in Canada. Now the coalition they sent to Quebec is very powerful in Quebec. If they can sell that to the Quebec government has the attitude that Ottawa has no jurisdiction. there anymore. I don't even think that people, barring the use of the notwithstanding clause, I don't see how we could ever put the genie back in the bottle in Canada. I think there are a lot of politicians who would like to do something, but they're terrified because the minute they talk about it, then the people on the progressive side say, "Well, it's a constitutional right; we can't change that." And what people don't realize is that this is all just smoke and mirrors. It's like I said to you literally, it is one judge in BC who made this decision. And she was an abortion rights advocate before she went on the bench. They shot for her. They made sure they got her. Like, the whole thing is, like, I just wish Canadians would wake up and start doing something about it to stop this, because it's only going to get worse.
Okay, this will be our last question for now before we move on to Monica, and then we'll have more questions after that.
Okay, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this because I will have difficulty signing this letter the way it's written. And the biggest difficulty that I have with it is that you refer to simple solutions across Canada, and yet this letter is not solution focused. You know, I would want more information on what solutions have been found to get us, around this dilemma. And I couldn't sign this letter because of that.
If I can tell you the two solutions that we've done,
I don't think it's just to me or the few people that are here that need that. The issue for me is presentation. And I couldn't sign a letter like this because of that.
I just there's one thing you had to explain the solutions that we have come up with. In 7 jurisdictions, they basically said that it's sufficient for the physician to provide information on how the patient can access it, and access to MAiD is provided without referral. In Ontario, where they do have a policy of effective referral, we had extensive discussions with them the last 4 years, where the Ministry of Health participated along with the college. And we were able to come to an agreement where they maintain the language of effective referral, but they say that if the physician provides information about how the patient can access the service, and the physician also assists the patient if they need assistance, then that would be sufficient. So it's like there's 8 other jurisdictions where it's all written out in the policy, and the college is refusing even to meet with us and discuss it. So that's the problem we're facing.
Well, perhaps if there was a presentation that was sent that outlines where houses are dealt with in other jurisdictions, it might lead to a discussion.
Yes, it's a dream possible.
Okay, thank you, Deacon Larry, very much. Thank you for your questions and comments. I'm now going to ask Monica. Now, Monica, do you still want to go to the... You can do it up here? Okay, great. It's all yours.
Sorry for that. I figured my computer screen. Thanks everybody for coming. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd. And those who know me know how much I enjoy standing up here and doing this. So I've been a healthcare nurse for 27 years. Last 27 years of my career, I recently retired, and I feel like I do know a little bit about this stuff. And I'd just like to tell you a little bit about what palliative care is as an option for anybody who's facing some major decisions in their life. So palliative care is pain and symptom management for anyone facing a life-limiting illness or disease. Can you hear me? Okay. It's holistic care offered in any setting for people of any age. Okay? It involves a range of care providers, and it also includes a patient's caregivers, like their own family. will be involved in the care and the decisions that are made. Palliative care focuses on quality of life and supports for people living with serious illness, their caregivers, and those closest to them. Okay, so not so much quantity of life, how much time can we give you, it's how do we make the best of whatever time that you have left. Palliative care can improve your quality of life, it can manage your symptoms, it can help you to understand your illness and make decisions, it can help with grief support, it can offer patient and caregiver support, and it can help you to manage emotional, psychological, social, and spiritual needs. There's so much more to palliative care than just me. Like Deacon Larry said, most patients get to end of life with their pain very well managed, but it's all those other things that come with facing the end of your life that need to be addressed. And palliative care is not just for the very end of life. Your primary care team can provide a palliative approach to care as soon as you receive a diagnosis. So lots of patients that get a cancer diagnosis are referred to our team fairly early. And it's for those other things. It's not because they think they're dying right away, but it's for the other things that go along with getting a life-altering diagnosis. And palliative care can happen all the way through your illness journey. And sometimes you'll get a referral to a palliative specialist for things that maybe are a little bit above and beyond what your primary care provider can help you with. It doesn't mean that your care provider has given up. It just means that you need some help in other areas. So palliative care is active care that you receive along with your other treatments. Lots of times you see patients that are going through chemotherapy or radiation therapy just as a help to get through some symptoms or some things that are happening that maybe the cancer doctors aren't as familiar with or comfortable with. It focuses on helping you to live as fully as possible for whatever time you have left. A palliative approach to care can support anyone with serious illness, regardless of their age, their stage of illness, or which treatments they receive. I've worked my whole career with adult palliative care, but I know there's an excellent palliative care program at the Children's Hospital as well, and I know that they are working on opening a maritime children's hospice in the area fairly soon. So it's not just for adults, it's for any age at all. Palliative care is not only for the last days and weeks of your life, it's for your entire illness journey, and a palliative approach to care can begin at any time in your illness. Palliative care offered by specialists can begin much earlier than you would expect. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a patient's room and identified myself as a palliative care nurse, and they're like, oh no, what do you know that I don't know? I'm like, I don't know anything. I'm just going to see you because you're nauseated. That's all I know. Receiving a diagnosis of serious illness can be really overwhelming for a lot of people, and I'm sure there's lots of you sitting here that have received that diagnosis, and you know what that feeling is. Asking key questions early on can help you to understand your illness, what to expect, and how to prepare for what comes next. Palliative care is not only available in hospital settings. We have, you can receive palliative care in your own home. It's not necessary to go to a hospital. We have a beautiful hospice in South End of Halifax. Our palliative care nurses go to long-term care facilities, and we've also had our palliative care teams go to the temporary shelters that have been put up around the city. So nobody is restricted from palliative care. If you can get a referral, then we can see you. So palliative approach to care sometimes is called the primary level palliative care, and this can be provided by your GP or your nurse practitioner. You don't have to see a specialist. They can support you through an illness from the time of your diagnosis and all the way through your treatment. A palliative approach to care includes the core elements of palliative care, and it's provided by non-specialists. So not everybody needs to see a palliative care specialist, and a lot more palliative physicians are being trained to provide palliative care at their level. Specialist level palliative care is usually for people whose symptoms and needs are more complex to manage. So we would get a referral on somebody who has pain that's not controlled by, say, Tylenol 3. A lot of family physicians are comfortable prescribing stronger medications like morphine or Dilaudid, and sometimes they'll refer to the specialists for that. things like nausea, loss of appetite, insomnia, there's all kinds of things. And if you need specialist level palliative care, it's a referral from your practitioner, either your GP, your nurse practitioner, if you're seeing an orthopedist for your bad hip, anybody can refer to palliative care as long as it comes from a physician of some sort. I have to say, we have an excellent palliative care program in HRM, and I'm not even just a little bit biased. We have a team consisting of 10 excellent palliative care physicians, specialists. We have 12 palliative care community nurses that cover all of Halifax counties. So, Tadalman, Muscatine, Enfield, Beaver Bank, and our physicians even go as far as Windsor, even though that's in Hants County. We have 3 palliative care in-hospital consult nurses, and that was my role prior to retirement. We have a 10-bed palliative care unit here in Halifax, as well as a 10-bed freestanding hospice in the South End. The hospice is separate from the hospital system, has its own physicians and nurses. But if you've ever visited there, it is really a beautiful spot for anybody who needs end-of-life care. Our team also consists of physicians, nurses, social workers, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, dietitians, bereavement coordinators, spiritual care providers, music therapists, just about anything that you can think of that you would need as you approach the end of your life. We are able to provide. And these providers follow patients at home as well as in hospital or at hospice. So the 3 important aspects of palliative care, symptom management, grief support, and advanced care planning. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about each one and take some questions. So symptom management, as I said, physical symptoms like pain, nausea, fatigue, shortness of breath, loss of appetite, constipation, you name it, if it's a symptom that's bothering you, then we can help you to improve that. Emotional symptoms, anxiety, depression. Lots of people suffer from emotional distress when they get a diagnosis. Spiritual symptoms like despair and loss of hope. And that's when we call on our colleagues from Maginley over there. Psychological symptoms like anticipatory grief and bereavement. We've got excellent grief counselors that work with our programs. You can receive grief support during an illness as well as after the loss. We don't wait until you've experienced a loss to connect you with grief support. Lots of people suffer grief when they adjust to the reality of what they're losing in their life. Relearning how to find joy and meaning in your life. There's no right or wrong way to grieve, and it's a normal experience, a normal response to loss, and everyone's experience is different. So there's so much we can do done with grief, and so many people just feel like it's something I've got to get through by myself, cope with, adjust, or get over. That's not always the case. If you live with a serious illness, you may experience grief related to changing roles for you and your family, like Deacon Larry Worthen. So many people feel a burden because they can't do the things they wanted to do, or they're relying on their family to do things for them. And that's a bit of grief. It's a loss in your life. You are no longer able to physically do for yourself. Changes in your social or work relationships. There's a bit of grief there if you've ever had to leave your job because of a serious illness. Right? You grieve the loss of your useful employment, loss of health, independence, and control. And those 3 are 3 of the big reasons why people say, I want to choose me because I can't do this for myself anymore. If you're a family member, friend, or caregiver of someone who's got a serious illness, you may experience grief related to preparing for future loss. You know what's coming down the road, you know your life is going to get long living without this person. Or seeing changes in someone else's health and not being able to help them or fix it for them. It's important to find a grief support approach that works best for you. The palliative care team offers a variety of grief support programs, including those for children who have lost parents, parents who have lost children, the loss of your siblings or your partner, loss of an aging parent, and the programs are offered. They can either be one-on-one, they can be online, and there's lots of great group programs for people in similar places, like spouses, wives who've lost their husbands who run grief groups. They offer walking grief groups, which I think is really cool for walk through Point Pleasant Park and work through grief with people with similar, facing similar loss. And the last thing I want to mention is advanced care planning, which is really important for anyone facing serious illness. It's a process of reflection and communication. It's a time for you to reflect on your values and your wishes and let the people around you know what kind of help and personal care you want in the future if you're unable to speak for yourself. It's an opportunity to sit down with your family and your healthcare provider to discuss future options and to let your loved ones know what aspects of care you would be willing to accept and what aspects of care you won't. And I'm not talking about MAiD euthanasia here. I'm talking about prolonged treatment, heroic measures, feeding tubes, those kind of things. It's important when you're reaching the end of your illness or your disease that you know what you want and what you don't want. Deacon Larry talked a little bit about withdrawal of care. Sometimes people will go through so much treatment that that's all they know, and they reach a point where they're like, I can't do this anymore, I'm ready to be done. But it's really hard for the families to say, it's okay for you to stop. So it's important that you have these conversations with your families and with your loved ones so that they know when you reach the point of there's nothing more we can do, I can't tolerate any more treatments, that they're okay with letting you stop. And you want to name someone as your substitute decision maker, someone who respects your wishes and will make sure that your wishes are followed if you're not able to speak on your own behalf. Nova Scotia Health has numerous resources on palliative care, and patient and family guides, how to care for someone at home, how to talk about principles of care, how to cope with the grief following the loss of a loved one, coping with the challenges of grief, preparing for death and dying, and how to make an advanced care plan. There's lots of resources available on the Nova Scotia Health website. You can go there and search out palliative care resources. There's lots of it. Sorry I didn't talk as long as you were.
We are so grateful to have Monica right in our community. This is not just something she does for work. This flows out of a sense of calling for her. And so if you or someone you know is interested in a conversation about palliative care, it'd be a pleasure to connect you to Monica.
Lots of times when I go in to meet a patient and I go with a physician, I'd be like, oh, I know that person. And they're like, how do you know that person? I know that person from my church. I know that person from my church. I know that person from my community. I know that person from my church. I kind of lost track of the number of parishioners that I followed in my career.
Any questions for Monica on what palliative care is or isn't? Any questions for Monica? Any questions for Monica? All right, you're off to, oh, here's one, Ainsley. Here's one, Ainsley.
I guess as long as we're talking about resources, do we have enough resources for palliative care? If we want to kind of counter the other proposal, the other options, do we have?
No, you don't. HRM is probably understaffed with regard to palliative resources according to population compared to other areas in the province and other areas of the country. So no, the answer is we don't.
Monica, I just wanted to mention that one of our doctors recently got seconded from Antigonish to go down to Yarmouth, and he's handling the whole Tri-County area. One guy, yeah.
That traditionally has been one physician territory. But even just with the population of HRM and our 10 physicians, it's still not adequate numbers. Our 12 community nurses follow up to 20 to 25 patients at any one time, which is still only about 250, 300 patients if you do the math. And referrals just they don't stop.
So is palliative care really accessible to everybody?
Say it again.
Is palliative care accessible to everybody then?
Maybe not, but with
training of physicians, family physicians, and GPs and nurse practitioners that are able to provide a palliative approach to care. But not everybody needs to see a specialist, but we do need to have all physicians comfortable with palliative care and prescribing medications and methods of treatments.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you very, very much. Now, there's not a lot of people, after sitting here for an hour and a half, there's not a lot of people I would feel comfortable handing the mic off to for a minute, but I know you're going to love listening to Reverend David Maginley, who, as I mentioned, recently retired as a palliative, a chaplain on the palliative care ward. David, come on up, and perhaps you've heard the tenor of the conversation tonight. Maybe you can respond to it. And there's one question that I have for you that comes up for me a lot. When we talk about the Catholic response to euthanasia, to medical assistance in dying, in fact, I got this question today after Mass. So I've heard, this is how the question went this morning, and it's framed in different ways, but it gets to this basic point. I've heard you say a lot how good it was for you to take care of your grandmother when she was dying, or your mother when she was dying. I heard that it was good for you, but how was it for the other person? Shouldn't we just have allowed them to elect euthanasia if they want to? Why is that something that we should even hoist on someone else? Is that a good starting point? Yeah?
Easy question. 6'8". I'm the high priest. I'm sorry that I copied your presentation. I don't know where it came. I sat with a gentleman who was a multi-millionaire tycoon, and he said to me, taught me how to make, tell me why I shouldn't have it. I said, that's not my job. I'm here to support you, and I have a mandate. I have to respect your desires. He says, I'm not asking you to respect me. I'm demonstrating my respect for you. I was insult experts. That's what I built my empire. I want you to tell me why I shouldn't have it. What's the spirit of your spirituality? What am I missing with me? I said, okay, you want it straight. He slammed his fist on the bed and he said, look, what's the point in me suffering here while my daughters sit there and watch me? It's pointless. Where's the meaning in this? I said, okay. Can you imagine that your dad is teaching your daughters the ultimate lessons a parent could ever impart? How to deepen their humanity, how to not abandon suffering in any respect, how to be fully present in the moment, how to be awake to the ordinary things, how to say the four important things as you die in many different ways, such as thank you, and I love you, and I forgive you, and goodbye. How to sit in silence and not run away. How to work with your thoughts and the difficult emotions. How to be comfortable with ambiguity and not knowing. How to give yourself to the mystery that brought you into this world and is wired to take you out of it. Can you allow your children to anoint your body with their tears while you lie unconscious in liminal realms that are beyond our comprehension? And can you give them the opportunity to witness the most beautiful and transcendent state of consciousness, which is incredibly common to people as they die? Almost 90% of people exhibit near-death awareness at the end of life. They see their world in body. They are filled with peace. The architecture of the room changes. They feel the peace of God. They speak of it cryptically, but sometimes directly, able to share it with their family members present. They're able to be rise from states of unconsciousness to consciousness and say, it's so beautiful. Don't you see that? It's universal across cultures, language, age, education, belief system, periods in history, geography. It is endemic to the human journey. Can you give yourself to that mystery? And he said, I wish I had asked you the question. I've been a chaplain for over 25 years for working with him. I retired as a MAiD. I can't function in the system that is so impoverished and bull-headed. Should we give the person the choice? When a person is distressed, I'm not going to take a lot, probably kill the person. When a person is stressed, let alone when they're facing the end of life, they have a cognitive constriction. So they're unable to consider the alternatives. He was unable to consider what I had laid on his altar to the self. And you need a guide at the end of life to help you deepen your humanity and amplify your love through your vulnerability and your surrender to the process. You're not giving up, you're giving yourself to a wisdom that's wired into you from the beginning, and your ideals to receive excellent palliative care and to make sure the trip has as little turbulence as possible. Stay ahead of the game, don't chase it. Ask your doctor the hard question: how will I die from this? How will it affect my metabolism, my systems? What can we do to mitigate that? The meaning in suffering is discovered only as we give ourselves to it as a functional process, and I'm going to get technical. A functional process that deconstructs the ego's identity in the reverse order that it formed as a calibration to the final state of human development, which is transcendence. Now I can roll that off because I just today finished final edits on my book about the spiritual dimensions of medical assistance in dying. It'll be out this summer and address all of this. And I'm asserting that MAiD is the ultimate act of ego self-preservation in the face of the very process that deconstructs it for your transformation. So, the driving force, as you beautifully covered, is existential distress. That's loss of meaning, function in the world, purpose, identity. There's no more joy in life, right? So people don't like dying and they don't like being vulnerable. Existential is a secular term for spiritual, and existential distress is spiritual distress at the end of life, which means we're using a medical procedure to treat a spiritual condition. It's absolutely inappropriate. On top of everything. So, Houston, we have a problem. Especially when the rational intelligence in our culture is through the roof, but the spiritual intelligence is in the basement. And there is not so much sanctity of life as sanctity of the individual, the choice of their autonomy, all part of the mythology in our culture. When real meaning is always found by engaging in suffering together collectively as community. MAiD is a reflection of a culture impoverished, with endemic loneliness, some of the highest suicide rates in the world, lack of meaning and purpose, lack of belonging, lack of spiritual intelligence. Did that answer the question? Yes. Okay.
Any further commentary on entrepreneurship today?
I'm just grateful for it. I have had my head down and doing the work of palliative care so much, and then I've been grinding away at this work for 5 years. I don't know the organizations out there, so I'd like a conversation with you to only send that and partner with you. Because there'll be tours across Canada and Europe, New Zealand, and Australia and such. So, that's great.
I've got a couple of questions here. I'll run over just so folks can hear you.
No one's going to sell his book.
Where? Go ahead.
Yeah, where's your book going to be available for purchase?
Oh, it'll be available in any bookstore or Bible on Amazon. Try to support your local books. But it will be out of this. I have to figure out the cover design.
One of the things that I find sad is that you say existential suffering is a secular term for spiritual. And insofar as the medical care system has tried to exist, or it wants to exist more apart from God, or keeping God out of the medical care system, that only creates the existential angst that people are, like the MAiD is a symptom of a spiritual problem. I think that's what you're saying too.
Yes, and spiritual issues, purpose, identity, belonging, safety, existential framework, and having those rise to the surface by creating good Latin, encouraging rises to the surface as the mindful religions. But secular society just wants to blow the foam off the cup when it contains so much grace. When you resist pain, suffering equals pain times resistance. So as you resist the suffering process by rallying and forcing your agenda upon it, you increase your existential distress. But as you give yourself to the suffering, through community and guided care, and a gradual, negotiated surrender of self, what happens is it gets transformed into grace. More belonging, deeper sense of identity, more love, deeper connection.
Yeah.
You described something about ego, that you just
Okay, this will be fair, okay? All right. The personal identity, the ego identity, is formed through life, through four contractions of consciousness away from the ground of being. That's a secular term. I keep secular terms in my book because that's the audience of language. So the ground of being, we call God. When you're born into the world, you emerge from an environment in which you were one with the womb. There was no personal self. Now you're suddenly in an environment, so that causes a split away from the ground of being. Contraction of consciousness. The second contraction happens when you realize there's living, non-living, moving, and static in the environment. So you're forming what's technically called object relations. And as a contraction of differentiation of being, we're going to increasing sense of separation away from unity. Third contraction is where you realize you're a mind and a body. So that's a seven, which causes a split between spiritual and physical. And then the fourth contraction is away from any information, experiences that do not support the ego's developing identity or put into the warehouse of the subconscious and just keep piling stuff in there. So, challenge and crisis trigger ego defense mechanisms for self-preservation. It wants to preserve its integrity. Nothing challenges the integrity of the ego's identity like that. But you've been practicing ego deconstruction all of your life. Every night when you fall asleep, you let it go. And every crisis you face, from the little ones at the early age when you lost your teddy bear and you wailed like the world was coming to an end in the grocery store, to when you went through a change in your family, or you lost your job, or you lost your girlfriend, or you lost your wife, and you lose your health. That which preserves the integrity of the ego goes into the ego's framework and persona. And we function on that from once in life. So dying is calibrated to deconstruct that in the reverse of the form. So the severing from the subconscious material is healed because dying calls on you to forgive and release and let go and integrate what is in the subconscious. You want to finish the unfinished love stories. And then the second contraction, or unity of mind and body, I'm afraid that happens through being in pain. Nothing connects the mind and body to unity like pain does. So that it's asking for the duration of the treatment. And frailty at the end of life, that does it too. Right? Back, head, and memory. Then the severing between the objects in the world and the personal identity, that is healed after a wilderness period of despair where you're working with the frailty and negotiating with it. And that will arrive at a place of release and letting go of who and what you were in the world and your objects in the world. When you do that with grace, there's actually a sense of freedom, lightness, and connection to everything, even to nature and reality. And then the final healing, you are one with the environment through near-death awareness, which comes upon almost everyone. And it's witnessed sometimes momentarily by nurses, by family members, but rarely by doctors who are not at the bedside for hours on end, like chaplains, nurses, and family. And that's near-death awareness, ecstasy, wonder, how you are one with the environment and the ground of being, just before your transformation. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you very much, David. As I mentioned, I'm going to be having a conversation on our parish podcast with David in the next couple of weeks. And I know we're all already excited about your book. Thank you. Thanks for being here. And we'll close with Ronnie as our parish continues to deal with this topic. We'll close with Ronnie and something we're offering here in the parish.
Thanks. I'm glad that David borrowed the microphone because I'm about 9. People have friends in all places, that's me. So I, just this year, I over the last few years have been realizing that we have a very large catechetical gap in our Christian formation. So that's a large educational gap. In that this year I'm 40, so I'm still fairly young. I kind of know the fourth oldest person in this room, there's only 3 people younger than me. And never once in my Christian formation, theological studies and all those sorts of things, have I ever really learned about the spiritual depth, the spiritual nature of the dying process. Only this year, last year, was that basically for the first time, as I got to know some, many of you know, John Alderville, who was approaching death. It has been, I can't thank God enough for getting to know him in the little ways that I have, and get to see that witness of what it is for a Christian person to approach death in a really holy and spiritual way. And that's really important, and that's a terrible circumstance, and I haven't had that experience when I'm educated or reformed in that. So I only understand that when we get to that process of dying, and if we're unformed around the dying process as Christians, that euthanasia can seem for some like a viable option, because we've never been educated with the deep sacrament of that. So we're running right here. I have to apologize. I wasn't aware that we had another program that we have access to, the Living with Christ program, but Living with Christ, right? Living with Christ, Living with Christ, there we go. But I plan to run starting next week, so the dates of this, it's called Eternal Rest. Let me pull out my phone here so I get it right. The dates are the 4th and 11th. Those are 2 Saturday nights. Eternal Rest is a program that is on the Forum platform, so even if you can't make it out, which I hope you can, because I'd love to have your voice in the discussion, it's on forums.org. So the 4th and 11th in the morning from 10 to 12, we'll go to that program. It's a 4-session program. We're going to do 2 sessions per day. So 2 Saturday mornings, come over for coffee and tea, and that's really the purpose of this program, is to talk about what is the deeply spiritual nature of the dying process. Now we are depriving ourselves and our families and our friends of when we don't allow ourselves to go through this and experience it in a deep way. Thanks.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you, Deacon Larry. Thank you, Monica. And thank you, Reverend David Maginley, for being here and all of your contributions tonight. Thank you, every one of you, for being here. If you want to get in touch with any of our speakers tonight, please get in touch with the office or with me. I can point you in the right direction, and let us care for one another. Go in peace, glorifying the Lord by your life. Thanks be to God.